Now, Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. That's a public interest group that investigates and prosecutes government corruption. They have been around for a long time. Tom Fitton is their president at Judicial Watch, and they have just filed a House ethics complaint against Ilhan Omar. Welcome to the program, Tom.
Glenn, good to be with you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. We're doing a special tonight, and you know the mainstream media makes this into conspiracy theory, or they say this is just a crazy, right wingers. But we've had the Minneapolis Star-Tribune do an investigation themselves and verify the investigations by crazy right wingers, and they either can confirm about 60% of it. And the rest of it, they say they can't disprove without her participation. These are serious, serious crimes. What we're presenting tonight, I believe, is enough for an indictment and a call for a grand jury. I gather you're at the same place.
Yeah, there's certainly enough evidence to warrant a criminal investigation into what went on there. And Glenn, you've been looking at this, I'm sure, for as long as we have. It's kind of been this low-grade fever type of corruption scandal. Mm-hmm. And when her hometown left-wing newspaper essentially puts its stamp of approval on the concerns that we've had for a long time about what was going on there, I think it's pretty hard now for the Justice Department to ignore it, Department of Homeland Security, the IRS. And, there's a political process for handling ethics concerns related to this type of activity, which is what we're trying to pursue with the House. We're not naive as to the interest in Democrats in doing this, but we just got to try to make the system work. We've got to try to remind these members they're not above the law and hold other members accountable if they're going to try to let them get away with it.
But I think they do think they're above the law. I mean, we're talking perjury, immigration fraud, marriage fraud, state and federal tax fraud, federal student loan fraud. If it was you, Tom, or if it was me, how much trouble would we be in? How much jail time would we be looking at?
Yeah, this would be an easy prosecution if it were a regular individual involved in it. But this is a politically connected figure, now a member of Congress. I'm sure the Justice Department would be horrified of having to do something here. But that's the goal of filing this ethics complaint. Not only will it put pressure on the House to do something about it, but highlight the issue for the Justice Department to follow up.
So hang on just a second. You say it would be very easy. Why would it be very easy? It's complicated.
Well, it's not that complicated. So your listeners should know, it looks like Miss Omar came into the United States using the name of another family.
The Omar family.
Her siblings, including her brother, went to the United Kingdom. It looks like she married her brother to give him some type of immigration benefits here in the United States. It's unclear how that plays out. So it's so bad that we can't be confident that, as we point out, it's not her. She's going by another name that's not her own. As a member of Congress, it's extraordinary.
So it seems to be pretty well documented that this is what happened. What I can't figure out is, why did she come with her father, her father and her sister, and go under the Omar family, with the other siblings going to the UK? Is it because the Omars could only take a certain number of people, or why didn't they take the whole family under the Omar name? Do you know?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but remember, this is these are refugees. They were in Kenya at the time. I mean, who knows what was going on? Maybe they could only bring 3 individuals in under the other family's name, or her other members wanted to go to the United Kingdom for other reasons. My guess is this is just the tip of the iceberg, and probably not an unusual story in terms of a fraud associated with refugee settlements here in the United States. So
apparently, DNA evidence shows that 80% of Somalis coming in are not related to the people they say they're related to.
Yeah, and that might be happening with a wink and a nod from authorities. The point is, get the refugees in, and the specifics of the names, however important it might be to national security and the rule of law, aren't terribly relevant to helping the refugees.
It's amazing.
But if you're going to run for Congress, you got to make sure all your ducks in a row. And that hasn't happened yet.
It's amazing to me that under Obama, we couldn't take Christian refugees because we just didn't know. But if you say, and I believe this to be true, authorities look at this with a wink and a nod for Somalian Muslim refugees, but they don't have a wink and a nod for Christian, Syrian, or Iraqi refugees. There's something really toxic in our system.
Well, you remember the refugee program, the vetting of refugees was outsourced to third parties, UN officials and folks like that. So even the United States just essentially accepted the word of the third-party vetters. That's what had been happening with the refugee program, which is why President Trump tried to reform it to get more security measures in place.
So let me go here. As you're looking at the fraud of the marriage, she marries her husband. Let's call him Ahmed 1. She marries Ahmed 1, but she says she only marries him under a religious ceremony. Is there any documentation of those two being married legally at all the first time?
No, and I think, some of the religious ceremonies were officiated by a Christian minister,
that was Ahmed 2.
Ahmed 2.
Ahmed 2. Ahmed 1 was a religious Muslim to the Muslim tradition. Ahmed 2 was a legal and Christian ceremony done by a Christian pastor, which how does this woman who's wearing a burqa get married by a Christian? It doesn't make sense.
I encourage all your listeners to go to the Powerline blog so they can start creating their own genealogical charts and marriage charts for the congressman from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And this is why the ethics committee needs to get into this, because she was playing fast and loose with our marriage laws. She was filing IRS forms, pretending to be married to one person when in fact she was married to another.
She was. We have
to amend the form. She had to amend the form. She says that's good enough, but it may not be good enough. It wouldn't be good enough for most any other American.
No.
If you committed marriage fraud and you were just caught on an IRS form doing it.
No, and she also committed perjury on like 26 different, I think they're traffic violations and other violations that she and Ahmed 2 got, and they put their address down as the address of Ahmed 1. So apparently they were all living together in some strange Three's Company kind of marriage with her children and both husbands. I mean, I don't even know what that is.
Well, if you're engaged in marriage fraud, it makes perfect sense.
Correct.
You understand. She's living with her brother. Her husband's there too. On paper, the brother's married to her, but it's nothing substantive beyond the paper marriage for purposes of immigration and other purpose. Who knows what other purposes that have them get some benefits from that marriage. And on top of that, you have to wonder whether the house was defrauded in terms of descriptions about her name and other background material in terms of filings with the house. This is there's criminal liability here potentially, but she could be removed from Congress if the House does its job here and concludes the evidence shows what we suggest it does.
But isn't she also, aren't these felonies?
Yep. The U.S. attorney, and I don't know who the U.S. attorney in Minnesota is, but if he ain't looking at it, he ain't doing his job.
Tom, you've looked at this stuff and you've been in this business for a while. How comfortable are you with the Facebook? A lot of the stuff we can't go any further because all we have are Facebook posts of her and Ahmed 2, the timeline, et cetera, et cetera. They were deleted from her timelines. They were deleted from her and her alleged brother's posts. All of this has been erased, but we have access to those things. How comfortable are you that these are legitimately her and her family's?
Well, when I see our good friends at the Powerline blog, who I trust, even though the big media pretends you can't trust them, they were quite diligent in trying to ferret out all this information. And then you have the legacy media come in, the Minnesota newspaper come in, and essentially say, yeah, there are a lot of questions here, and she's acting like she has something to hide, and essentially repeats the reporting of our conservative friends there in Powerline. As you point out, I've been doing this for a long time. You kind of, people sometimes come to the wrong conclusions about publicly available documents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the right conclusions about this is that something illegal took place. Scott Johnson, who runs Powerline blog, did all the reporting on this. He was in the media the other day. He said he was 98% certain marriage fraud took place, and 90% certain the marriage fraud was with her brother. So something needs to be done here. So, and if she's innocent, then let the investigation figure that out.
Right.
Or let's have an investigation so that we can conclude one way or another whether we should move on.
Shouldn't be, and she should be.
There is a presumption of evidence. There is a presumption of innocence.
Right.
But there's enough evidence that any other citizen would be subject to a criminal investigation.
Yes. Tom, thank you so much. Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. He is the president of that.